Welcome back guys. In this video I'm going to be teaching you how to go from this, how did I just die to a CAS, to this. Oh my god. I'll be going over many different aspects of how to properly play CAS, including important controls, graphic settings, as well as mechanics and gameplay tips. As always, don't forget to leave a like or subscribe to the channel as it really does help out, and feel free to ask any questions in the comments if you feel like I didn't answer them in the video. I will also leave a link to my controls in the description, however do remember to back up your own controls first before importing mine. I also wouldn't recommend using my exact layout because it's best to stick with what you're used to, and my keybinds are already so messed up, but it's just built into my muscle memory at this point, so I just won't change them. So starting off, I think being comfortable with your controls is the most important thing to being good at CAS, as you don't want to be going for a missile run and you just freeze up because you forgot how to fire your missiles. So if you do add any new keybinds, just make sure you practice with them in test drive first so that it becomes muscle memory, so that you don't need to think about what buttons you're pressing in a live match. Now there are a few binds that I would 100% recommend that you use just because it makes things so much easier that a lot of people don't know about. Number one being external view keybind. This is extremely useful for just returning to the third person view straight away instead of having to spam the toggle view keybind. You can also specifically bind the targeting pod view with targeting optics view, but most of the time toggle view works well enough anyway, so. Now this one is probably the most important, which is sight stabilization. You do not need to bind activate target point if you have this, as sight stabilization basically does the exact same thing but better, because it also allows you to switch to the offset track mode by pressing it again once you have a target locked. And again, make sure to practice any new keybinds that you add from this. Also, being able to quickly switch between the TGP view and the third person view makes it so much easier to realign yourself, because you don't want your AGMs to have to pull very hard. Finally, weapon lock air to ground is another essential keybind, as most people only use the fire button to lock the ATGMs, but if you accidentally locked like a dead tank or something, then you wouldn't be able to unlock them if you don't have this binded. Moving on to the less important ones, if you use fire secondary weapons instead of binding bombs, AGMs, air-to-air missiles separately, then you need to bind switch secondary weapons to cycle through the weapon types, which is what I personally have, and it's bound to my scroll wheel, which makes it much easier to switch between them, since you don't need to spam some button on your keyboard instead. You can just use your scroll wheel. Next we have deactivate target point. You only really need this if you're planning to use dumb bombs, since it won't let you drop bombs in CCIP if you have this turned on, while also having your target point set. Now if the only laser weapon you're going to use are like laser guided bombs, then you don't need this one, but if you plan to use brimstones or hellfires to their full potential, then turn off enable laser designator before launch and set up a keybind for turning on your laser. This is very useful for using the INS capability of brimstones, and I have a full tutorial on how to basically kill any AA without being shot down using this method. These last ones are entirely optional, but turning off automatic activation of radar can be useful if there's an enemy jet, since your radar will be picked up by their RWR. Also, for planes that do have a missile approach warning system, it will automatically dispense flares, so you can turn it off just to not waste them. It's up to you if you want to leave it on, since sometimes it might save you from IR missiles. That's it for the controls, so let's talk about the graphic settings. So if you want to be absolutely hated by everyone, then enable old video card support at the bottom of the graphics tab. This will turn on ultra low quality or ULQ, and you don't need to change anything else. It won't change any of your old graphics settings, so if you don't like it or if you accidentally touched grass, then you can just turn it back off. It should also save any post effect settings that you have on, however you can't change them while you have ultra low quality on for some reason, so you have to first turn it off and then restart your game, and then the post effects button will reappear. The only thing I've changed in post effects is color correction to contrast, which just makes the game look a bit less washed out. But basically ultra low quality just removes all grass, which is a bit ironic, and it can sometimes remove trees at far distances when you're in a plane. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the graphic settings. So now moving on to how to effectively use your plane in battle. Obviously the best way to improve at CAS is just by playing, but there are a few tips and tricks that I can give you that will instantly improve your gameplay. It kind of depends how you want to play CAS, but if you're going for kill streaks, then the best thing to do is spawn as early as possible. This will minimize the amount of AA that you see, but obviously they're still going to sometimes be the first spawn AA players. Light tanks are amazing for this, since once you get the airstrike modification, you can get 14% off the spawn costs of all your planes and helis if someone destroys a scouted target. Also, it's more efficient if you scout someone and then you damage them without killing them, that way you get 2 assists. So you get the reduced SP cost while also getting extra SP for the damage. A lot of nations don't have top tier light tanks, but if you're skilled at ground, then most 10 plus BR light tanks are still quite good. Now once you're actually in your plane and you don't have a cloudy map, try to gather as much information as possible as soon as you spawn. First check your RWR to see if there's any AA, and if you do see S1 on your RWR, which is a Panzer, try not to panic and try and find them first in your TGP. You can also ping the spawns on the map to make it a bit easier to find them, but if you can't find them within like 5 to 10 seconds, then I recommend getting low to the ground or like hiding behind terrain. Also check if there's any friendly planes up, that way you know you're not going to get completely focused by all the enemy AA and you can relax a bit more. If your RWR is completely clean and you haven't found any other AAs like the Type 81C since they don't have radar, just continue climbing while continuing to scan with the TGP to find where all the enemies are, that way you know where to aim when you're doing your dive. Then once you're over the battlefield and you're within range, you can start your dive and just fire off all your missiles. It's literally just as easy as that. Obviously if you're using the brimstones, you're only going to be targeting one tank at a time while you're diving, but once you've used all your fire and forget missiles, try and find one more tank just to drop your bombs on. And also try to be smart about your targeting, like don't shoot at any tanks that are close together because it can mess up the tracking, or if there's like dead tanks nearby. And save your bombs for any targets that are close together. Now yes, I am oversimplifying, but it does depend on the map and how cloudy it is, but you will get better with practice, and also being comfortable with your controls will definitely help you out a lot. You can also use your air brake just to give you a bit more time to find targets while you're shooting your missiles. Also make sure to pay attention to the kill feed as well to know if there's any planes or AA. Learning the different RWR numbers is also very helpful, that way you know what you're facing and how dangerous they are. Also try to stay below the contour altitude, as that will just instantly give your position away. It's usually around 5 kilometers, but also depends on the map. Like on snowy maps it's a lot lower, I think it's like 2 kilometers or something. Dodging missiles also isn't that difficult, it depends what plane you're in. Like the Eurofighter and the Rafale just pull so hard that it's just so easy to dodge. Literally just spinning around is probably the easiest way to dodge SAMs. But the F-16 and the F-15 usually only pull like 9 Gs, so it's a bit more difficult to dodge them. Also passing 90 degrees directly over their AA makes it so much more difficult for them to target you, since they have to turn their turret like 180 degrees if you go over them. You can see here I align myself directly over the Panzer, that way I know when I pass him he's going to have to turn his whole turret around. Then I quickly readjust to aim for the ammo, and I know I'm safe from the rounds because he wasn't able to lead. Also getting in close like this makes it much harder for missiles to hit you, since they just can't turn as well when you're close. So you can use that to your advantage by popping up at closer distances and then scan with the TGP. That way you can safely gather information of where the AAs or tanks are. You can also use the new map targeting feature, which is insanely useful for finding and dealing with AAs. Another quick mention is targeting stuff that's out of the missile seeker range. For example, with the KH-29Ts, if you press weapon lock and it says point, you are not tracking the tank, you are locking the ground where the tank is. So if you fire and the tank moves while it's still out of lock range, then the missile will hit the ground. However, if the target stays still, the missile will acquire the tank once it gets in lock range, so even if the target moves, it will still track. This is useful against AAs that stand still, since you can just launch way out of the lock range, and if they don't move, then the missile will start tracking when it gets a bit closer. The size of the vehicle also determines how far you can get a lock, which is why it's so difficult to track ocelots. But if it says track instead of point, then you're actually tracking the tank and not the ground, so you can just launch as normal. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Again, remember to practice and get comfortable with your controls if you do add any new keybinds. Let me know in the comments if you do have any more questions that I didn't answer in the video. Please share this video if you found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one.